All right, and welcome back to the Prometheus Deep Dive, a CNC podcast. Today, my co-host is Alex from the Survivor Game Show Network. How you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to talk about this episode.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I know we just kind of recently met, and for a little background, so Alex is a production member for the Survivor Game Show Network, and most recently, while he has not played with her, he was on production for Lauren's most recent season on that channel, which there will be a link in the description if anyone wants to watch.
Well, yeah. So I got to see her play. I definitely knew when she was coming in to play Prometheus. She talked to me about it, and she was like, "I feel I played a completely different game than I usually do. Like I usually amp things up, try to be more entertaining. This time, I wanted to come in, be more myself, but still be there to play the game." And I feel like that is what we're seeing more of because I've known Lauren now for probably like a year and a half. Like before org stuff, we met each other through patron groups and just connected. Very lovely girl, but like sometimes I can definitely see she loves being that character. So I love seeing this season, seeing the more real side of her because she's a player and people are recognizing it.
Oh, 100%. I think people recognized it pretty early on. And which we'll kind of dive into that more. But yeah, with Lauren as well, it still shocks me, even like when I watched it happen, watched the game happen when we originally recorded it, when, I was editing the episodes, because just like you, I'm more familiar with a very different Lauren. But this still has traces of that Lauren as well. Because I met Lauren, I think in about 2 weeks, it'll be a year when I met her in a different game. Didn't really get a chance to play together despite being on the same starting tribe. But anyway, like I said, we'll get to that in a moment. So just kind of starting it off, we're going to talk about the boots. We'll talk about Mara first. She was the first boot of the episode. So what'd you think about that boot and just of Mara in general?
So as much as I would like the casual viewer that would watch these, which let's be real, no one's a casual if you're watching these videos, but like you think, okay, it makes sense. It's a straightforward vote. She seems someone who's low in the totem pole. I honestly believe they made the wrong choice. I think if Mara fought a little more and didn't do she's similar to me. I do self-deprecating humor a lot. And when she made that little joke to Anna and Colin about like, oh, you could vote me out. I'd like you just, it's just something you can't say in a game like this that's so fast-paced because that just goes easy decision. They were on the right track because I was making notes while I was watching this, and when she started saying Kyle and Andrew, but it was like focusing more on Andrew and Anna and Colin, like, no, Kyle is who you should be wanting to go after. I thought we were about to go in there and see Kyle's fears come to life, and he goes down in a 5-1 vote. She seems like a lovely person. I think she has potential in a future game now that she's gotten her feet wet, understands what the pace of game would be like. So I'm sad to see her go, but it seemed like for the most part, they're like, this is the path of least resistance.
Absolutely. I mean, there definitely were pros and cons to having each of them gone. But I think a lot of while I genuinely, and I'm not going to say it just to say it, but while I genuinely like all of the players in this cast, I got very lucky in that way. But I love Mar and I love Kyle too. But Kyle, he messed up his game on a number of occasions very early on, and so I see the pros and cons of keeping or getting rid of either of them. But it's funny, the Primordials did say that regardless of what happened, they needed to be unified going into the merge, which as we even saw on the Titans tribe, they said the same thing, but we did not see that happen. But yes, with Mara is awesome. I absolutely loved her from the moment I met her. I knew people that knew her, which is how she even heard about Prometheus and applied for Prometheus. But yeah, with Mara, I mean, I think she could do even better in another game if she gets the chance to play. But the only difference is, I'd say, from Prometheus versus other minis is that, at least in my experience playing other minis, they're even more fast paced because they're generally only one day. They're like 6 hours long. And then I often find that like 8 times out of 10, everybody knows each other. So like if you are that one fresh player, they'll boot you out instantly because you don't really have a ton of time to get to know people. But if they already know someone, they're just going to stick with who they know.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I have minimal experience. I played one mini offshoot over a year ago. I was a alternate. There were people that knew each other. I knew absolutely no one. I was a fortunate player where because of that, I wasn't playing a loyal game. I literally was you had to go in to be like, I'm cutthroat, I'll be loud, I'll be in your face, but I know I'm doing the game to get people to keep me. I get to the end, I get in second. So there's a pathway for those who don't know. But like, I do have a question for you with the between the Kyle and Mara decision. Like, I know Kyle in his confessionals was talking about like, oh, I want to see if I can pull David in. Did other people were any of them more cognizant of that plan of his as one of his like maybe that's why he was a potential target? Because I would think if they want to be tribe strong, primordial strong, get rid of Kyle so then you can just nick that in the bud and be like, those are the other four. They're the enemy. We're staying with this five.
The interesting thing is, no, nobody actually knew about that. The only people that knew about the David and Kyle thing was on the Titans, and that's because David himself told them, like, "Oh, Kyle," and you actually did see it in the episode right in the very beginning. You know, David was like, "Kyle's awesome. Like, I would love to bring him in because obviously, with them being down numbers, they need as many people as possible." And I remember thinking at by the end of day one, we had like a production meeting afterwards, and I even remember thinking, and I'm fairly certain I said it like, oh, this is great. The Titans just pissed David off. Something that you're not going to see in the show, period. So I'm comfortable with saying it here. Is that David was so pissed off at that vote that he did not even record a confessional because he said that if he would have recorded a confessional, he said this after like months after the game ended, if he would have recorded a confessional, he probably would have said stuff that he regretted. And so he didn't end up saying anything at all. So in my mind, I was thinking, oh, David's pissed off. This is crazy because if Primordial stays strong, they can scoop David in and then just pick off all the other Titans. So that was my train of thought at the end of it. But no, nobody knew about that little exchange because everyone was, they went from the main room into two breakout rooms. And at that point, I don't think anyone was thinking to check breakout rooms. I think Colin might have been the first person to do that. And he just started doing that to figure out who the votes were.
And that's smart. Like when he started doing those in the earlier episodes, I never thought about that. Like I help run games that are on Zoom, and we are able to see the tribe chat. Like I use it, so I do the confessionals for our groups, and I would pull people through knowing where they are and be like, okay, this is a perfect time to pull them out, pull this person in. Using it to figure out who left the game is just that's a smart move. Just to be like, I understand, and now you can already pre-think, okay, why? And then figure out your plan from there. So I like that from Colin.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I mean, obviously, because he made it well known, everyone else started doing it on the Primordials as well. So absolutely love that. But yeah, kind of going back to just generally the Primordials. Absolutely, like I said, love Mara. I love the whole cast. There definitely was you know, a lot of little moments between Anna and Mara, and Anna definitely wanted to fight for Mara, as we actually saw in the beginning of the season, probably in episode 3. And I think, you know, as we saw that interaction early after their challenge, you know, I think they did want to keep Mara around, you know, and I think that's why they were, to me, I don't think they were fishing to incriminate her. I think they were fishing to just kind of like feel her out and potentially still pull her into keep in her mind like that they're all strong together.
Absolutely. That's exactly how I read it. There was a big difference between how they talked and how you should perceive them talking to Mara as opposed to how they talked and how Kyle explained he was talked to by Colin. Like Kyle felt like they're trying to make me say the name so that they can go back to her and be like, see, we are strong. We just heard him say your name. We're going to keep you here. You'll be good. We'll see what happens because with both Kyle still in the game and David mad, like those are two people that I think that can cause a lot of chaos for both tribes now that they're all together as the Olympians. It'll be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. So now moving on to the Titans tribe. So this time we saw Zach go home. So what did you think about the Zach boot? And what did you think about Zach in general?
Zach is someone who I felt was one vote away from being able to, as Lauren said, snake his way through. But he's seems very sociable from what we can tell, has a good personality for these games, has a good read also on the room. Like I think he was the first person to accurately read. I think it's Colin that's one of the heads of the table over on the other side. I think Kyle's the one that's on the low end of the totem pole, or Amara. I think David ended up saying Anna, which that's a wrong read, but it's like he seemed to know his stuff, but I think he made it a little too well known to people saying like, oh, I'm always sketchy, or I'm like, I played as a rat. So when you're the only guy left, and obviously Caro and Lauren decided that they had more trust in having Caitlin around and having their girl final three together, and David's safe, because who knows if Caro wins, I think there's a good chance that they send David home.
I mean, you can't really ever say 100%, certainty, but I would say I am 99.99999% sure if David did not have immunity, they would have gotten rid of David over Zach, despite them being a little sketched out by Zach, which I still wonder to myself. And I hope Zach comes on our Afterthoughts podcast so I can actually ask him, like, what is the logic behind telling everybody that you're known as a rat and you're sketchy and you're this, that, and the other, like I'm very curious about that. But yeah, I'm 99% sure they would have definitely gotten rid of David over Zach.
Right. And I think the other thing, Zach, like it's obviously playing on the couch as the quarterback. It's easier to see the play and what could be done. I think if they could have, he should have fed into Caro's paranoia about Lauren. And like, I think if Zach pushed enough, David would have ended up being, okay, we don't need to have her as a shield. We can get rid of her. Caro can be our shield or whatever, and do something along those lines. And instead of pushing to make it's either me or Caitlin, make it, how about us three? If we're really tight as we say we are, we don't need Lauren. We can get rid of Lauren. You say you can pull Kyle in. Kyle can replace Lauren. We now have 5. We have a majority. It's easy.
That's actually very interesting. I never thought about it that way, because the way that I've always thought about it was, and I think they also said it in the episode, I apologize, I see so much footage that sometimes it's hard to keep things exactly straight, but I think the thing is they should have said, hey, Caitlin, I think, is going to seem like more of a non-factor going into the merge, so why not just have 4 shields strong with Lauren being our front shield? Otherwise, Caitlin could potentially, whether or not she's going to be strong or not in their minds, Caitlin is the possibility of everyone wanting to keep her around the longest out of the Titans. So we really need to get rid of her.
That's an excellent point too. And I think the problem some people have with minis and how to navigate them is I think some people play it as if it's the long game where you can bide your tongue, maybe be a little more laid back, be more reserved. Like that's going to be good and that'll get you 5th place sometimes in these games. But you need, especially when you know your name is a possibility, you need to be more proactive. You can't be afraid to put a name out there, because this is such a fast-paced game. You can say a name one round and work with that person the very next round. It's like, that's just how a mini works. So you shouldn't have that fear. And I think it wasn't complacency, but I think Zach was just like, I'm not ready to say Lauren's name, so it has to be either me or Caitlin. And he sort of just like let that be allowed to happen.
Yeah. I think another thing too with Zach is and it's very prevalent in this episode, whereas it wasn't in the other episodes, is that it seems like when Zach gets anxious, flustered, maybe even to an extent, I would say embarrassed, he starts to default to a lot of I forget what the mannerisms are called. A lot of I'm going to call them filler mannerisms, like the ums and the constant uses of like, and the like I don't care, like, so we definitely saw that with him. Now granted, I was being a little bit hyperbolic there, imitating him, but I think that is something with Zach, as he started to get flustered, and so maybe that was hindering him in potentially coming up with something better.
That's a great point. Like I just do it right now. And sometimes you can't escape your filler words. I always work very hard to get rid of them, but when you have that anxiety, it is hard to overcome it when it starts hitting you. And that's a weakness for a lot of us. And once you start showing a weakness, that's where people can be like, okay, he's showing he can't take it right now, or he's lying. Why is he not talking full rightly with like all this and be truthful to me? Even if he is being truthful, that's not the perception. And unfortunately, in Survivor, perception is reality.
Yes, that is 100% true. Yeah, with Zach though, it's funny though. I mean, his social game is like top tier of the entire cast. That, you know, despite all of the negative little things that came out, everyone still wanted to work with him. Caitlin even said it. She's like, I don't care that you're a rat. Like, you're awesome, and I would have loved to continue to work with you. So, but yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, and we talked about it earlier a little bit, is that, you know, they both tribes talked about doing the same thing, and that's staying strong and unified in this vote so they can move forward. But once again, we did not see that of the Titans. So I'm very curious why exactly they didn't fill in David. You know, they could have filled him in last moment if he was afraid that he might, you know, finagle something. But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting that two tribes wanted to take the same approach, but two tribes literally got opposite approaches or approached it differently in the end.
Right. And I do wonder as well, it's like, because you made it a point to put it in the beginning of the episode. And it was when they were the primordials were talking in their tribal setting while they were waiting for the results of the temple. And you hear Colin go, what if there aren't any advantages in this game? And it gets the wheels spinning. They don't know for sure. So maybe it was, even though they trust David, like if it's true that if he wasn't safe, there was a 99.9999% chance of him going home. Maybe they just did not trust him enough to say it beforehand, which that's obviously a big error to do. It's what risks do you want to take? Do you want to risk not telling him and then him isolating himself and go, oh, instead of being at the bottom of your 4, I'll go to the bottom of their 5 and I don't care as long as I'm ahead of you? Or do you think he's going to take it better? And I think you should know the people that you're playing with.
Absolutely. But, you know, I mean, that's one of the challenges of minis is it is hard to figure out who you're really playing with in the end. So, but yeah, any more thoughts on the Titan tribe? Anything about Lauren or Caro, Caitlin?
I think Caro's playing a solid game. I think she's playing the best game in that tribe right now. She had herself in that in between spot, which is the most ideal spot you want to be in. Obviously, not to this soon having to make that decision, but she has herself in a good spot. I'm worried going in that even though the primordials have their things about Lauren and David, if they go, well, if they didn't take them out, well, if we take out Caro first, and then we could take those David and Lauren out. So she's in a tricky spot, but she seems to be savvy enough where I believe in her to be able to get through it.
Yeah. And I agree. I think she is like one of the top players on the Titans tribe. I think it kind of goes back between her and Lauren personally. I always juggle back and forth. I think I did it last episode too, you know, really thinking about who to give out the Ember Award to. And I gave it out to Caro. But, you know, we also talked about how, you know, you thought that the mistake was getting rid of Mara. And, you know, like I said, I see the pros and cons to it. I do think in this instance, the mistake was keeping Caitlin, because once again, you want to keep strong, but also given the position that Caro has actually had herself in, I think she could have remained a hidden top player on the Titans if they would have had Zach in there.
I agree, because essentially you're making a decision between who am I going to piss off, David or Lauren. And I've seen Lauren play, and even when she does get upset, she knows enough not to just completely blow up her spot and cut the ties. I think she would have realized if they took out Caitlin, I get it. I wish you would have told me, but I'm still willing to work with you, and which is the right approach to have. That's what I assumed she would do. God knows what would have happened, but
yeah, I mean, I have seen a different side of Lauren where she fucking blew up at a tribal before, on more than one occasion, really. But yeah, she's a smart enough player that she could, she knows that she's got to go back potentially to, work with people. Caro also said that in like the second or third episode. She says, I don't care what happens from one round to the next. Like, I'm willing to work with anyone. And Caro's only coming off of one game. She's coming off of Fool. She's not coming off a mini. This is our first mini. Oh, wow. So, but yeah, I mean, in this instance, though, we saw in the room at the end, it was Caro and Lauren. So, I mean, I think Caro could have pushed for Lauren to be a part of the vote. And at the end of the day, unless Lauren, really had the wheels going to get her to work against it, I think Lauren would have had to have, folded and just went with what would have been the majority.
I think that would have ultimately happened if Caro made that decision. Like, I think ultimately it was Caro's choice. Whether or not it's the right one, we'll see in these future episodes. But yeah, it's like I would put them as a 1A, 1B. Currently, Caro has that 1A just because Lauren is a little more forward. So people are recognizing and openly discussing her being an active player, a leader type, a threat. They're not saying that about Caro. They may be saying it in their confessionals, but they're not saying it out loud to the group. Like, oh, look what Caro's doing.
Yeah. All right. And then I think just to touch upon Caitlyn, because I think she definitely deserves it. So we obviously saw Caitlyn in the very beginning of the game. She arrived late. It's funny, throughout the game, we keep saying varying times. Really looking back on it, she probably did miss maybe like the first, I'd say half hour to an hour, maybe around 40 minutes. But it's really hard because it is also a while ago. So I'm really trying to remember, but I'd say she missed about that much time, but she's done a good job of really coming back and making those social connections. Obviously she got started with it right away when they won that first challenge. And then as we saw in the second one, that's how, pretty much they were able to really boot Tiki. So, I think, even if we don't really discuss Caitlyn for a long time, I just want to give Caitlyn the props she deserves.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Those who survive these votes, like, you have to give them some credit. Like, we may not see everything, but you can just tell Caitlyn's a very sociable person. She seems very likable as well. So even with missing time, that only truly matters, I think, at the first vote that you're vulnerable at. Once you're past that, you've already had a couple more hours to build a bond. And hey, if you're likable enough, you can move up a ladder quickly.
Oh, 100%. 100%. All right. So moving on to the challenge, I don't know if there's a whole lot we do need to talk about with this challenge, but obviously we saw both tribes competing for individual immunity, which was not something they thought that they were doing. So what are your thoughts about, the going into the challenge and everything like that?
So I love these type of rounds where they think like, oh, maybe there's going to be a swap. Maybe there's going to be an early merge, and they go, no, individual immunity, but for both tribes. And you're both going to tribal. I love that because it just accelerates the game and strategy. And I'm someone who's a lot more, as much as I like to think I can be a social player, I am social, but my strength is my strategic game. So anything that involves me having to raise it up a notch, that's where I'm at. I love that. I love the challenge because I could tell when you were making your explanations during all of your challenges beforehand. I could see the people that were listening. I could very much tell the people that were just going one ear in one ear, out the other. So it made this round extremely fun to watch.
This will be cut out. So for anyone that knows, we just had a little freeze in the connection. But anyway, what I was just saying was, you were just saying that you could see who was paying attention, who wasn't. And then I was just saying it's very unfortunate because Mara was paying attention and she was taking notes, but she unfortunately was actually the only person who happened to score 0 points.
Right. It's hard, honestly. Like, as much as I like to think I have a good memory, memory challenges are also something that I'm weaker at. I don't think I would have gotten none of them right. Like, part of it because my dad's side of the family is of Greek ascent. When I was younger, I always was in the Greek mythology. So this would have been more in my wheelhouse than others. So I would have expected to get at least half of them right. But it was hard. I also was just more impressed with, at first, Joe, Andrew, and Anna, they were like getting every single one correct at the beginning, just like pounding them out. And then out of nowhere, I like look over, I'm like, David's getting a lot of these right. And part of me was thinking, how is he remembering this stuff? He wasn't even involved in the challenge. I wouldn't have expected him to recall the information because he just has other things going on while he was playing.
That guy can multitask 100%. And I think the thing is it's maybe something you don't really see in this day one, but he is observant. I think the social game is the better part of his game. But yeah, he's observant, he's multitasking. I mean, yeah, as you said, let's like go through a day in the life of David. So he woke up, he then went to go pick up his car. He hopped in an Uber, picked up his car from the body shop. Then he drove to get his hair cut. Then he drove home. Then he drove to Pet Value, Petco, whatever the hell the place is called, to get his dog groomed. Like that was his whole day one. Like
that's crazy. Like in my mind, I'm the Primordials going like, why isn't he out yet? What are you guys doing? Because in my mind, I don't really care as much about the earlier stage of like getting all those bonds and everything. Like bonds are important. Find your couple people. I don't need to have a whole tribe liking me. And if I see a person that I think can be unreliable, and even if it's just that, because they're doing other stuff, I'm like, well, that's an easy excuse for me. How can I trust him if he's not participating in a challenge because he's getting his haircut? It's like, where can I rely on? Like I can only stretch so far for you, man. This ain't it. But they are keeping around it, and it's like you said, it has to be that social game. Probably one of the better ones on this cast.
Yeah, definitely. But also, I guess at the same time, when we look at the social game of the Titans, like I said, if it came down to it, I think they really would have voted David out.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, also going with the challenge. I mean, if I recall correctly, so yeah, it was actually a tie between Caro and David, but it was David getting that final point.
Yes.
If I remember correctly. That is what put him over, because Caro and him were tied for 5 points. Now, something that I'm 99% sure was not in the edit for episode 2 was, and the reason why David actually got that right was because in addition to David attempting to do the Prometheus thing in the video challenge, the Prometheus act, he actually did do the Ares act. But CJ had submitted Ares before him. And he froze again. There we go. You're back. Okay. You were only gone for like 2 seconds.
I was going to say you froze for me there.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just saying though, that, yeah. So in episode 2 during the Thalia's Hunt challenge,
yes,
David also submitted for Ares, which is why he knew it. But CJ at the time submitted first. So that didn't count. Reason it didn't make the edit for episode 2. But him doing that is literally what saved him and got him immunity. So it's kind of crazy.
Hey, that's what you want to see in these shows. Just like the randomness of just like, I just so happened to do this. That's why I'll remember it and no one else will. Like, good on him. You get a nice little token there. I wanted an individual immunity. Lauren did absolute shit. I knew she would do absolute shit in this. But that's the fun of it. I love the challenges where Lauren doesn't do well, because then I get to see the more fun side of Lauren when she gets frustrated.
Well, in one sense, I'll say it's can be fun. It can also be frustrating. In this instance, it was fun because she was just, she was kind of, joking with the rest of the group. But then we also saw in the Wings of Icarus challenge, she was getting frustrated, and let's just say there's a lot more of Lauren, bitching that did not make that episode. But anyway, so let's actually move on to the Ember Awards. I only usually give out 1 per episode, but in this time I'm actually going to give out 2, and this is something I've been thinking about, but I didn't officially write it on my whiteboard. So I'm going to actually give 1 to the Primordials and 1 to the Titans, mainly because we've had the Titans more at the temple, so we get to see a higher level of strategy at this point because their numbers were dwindling. So but yeah, you can give out 1, you can give out 2. So who do you think deserves the Ember Award?
I'll do 2. So for Primordials, I feel like, how can you not pick Anna? She's in the best position out of that tribe. Like, she's being seen by the Titans as someone who's on the low end of the totem pole. So perfect chance to be a double agent there when the time comes. And Collins seems to be the face. You have other people that are more vocal, and an Andrew or a sketchy person like a Kyle that could be more of a shield for her when really she should be the shield for other people. Her game's strong. And then for the Titans, I feel like I have to stick with what I've been saying today, and I would have to give it to Caro just because I see her as that 1A on that tribe without people really talking about her as the 1A.
Interesting. So I actually have two people that are not the people that you said. So in my mind, I actually think that Colin deserves it for the Primordials, and that's because he primarily due to his social game, but also his strategic game, he has managed to get himself into the #1 spot on that tribe. He's well liked, even as I think also David says it in the edit. He always says hi to the tribe when they first go back to the main room. So Colin's playing a good social game. His strategy, even when they win, they're still allowed to use Messenger. While some people aren't utilizing it during that time, Colin is. He's always making those connections with people. So I think Colin deserves it. Andrew is a very close second for me. Okay. But I also think, what you said about Anna is perfectly valid. And given that it's also her very first time playing, if she wouldn't have said that it was her first time playing, honestly, I don't think I would have been able to actually tell. She's playing a really good game. But I'd say for me, it goes to Colin for the Primordials. As for the Titans tribe, I yet again was going back and forth between Lauren and Caro. And this time I actually have to give it to Lauren because Lauren managed to make that girls' alliance on episode 3, which clearly paid off for this episode. So it was something she's setting up. She managed to, while you can see a social and a strategic game, I think her strategic game is more relevant to the other players, and that's why people are drawn to her. Zach, very clearly said that last episode. And then in this instance, once again, something she had set up a couple episodes ago came to fruition now. And in addition to that, she managed to, despite Caro being very paranoid and very skeptical of her, she managed to keep Caro with her. And I think personally, what ultimately quelled Caro's paranoia might have been Lauren saying, "Hey, I haven't done it, but I think I'm ready to make a final 2, and I'm making it with you." Because Lauren last episode actually wanted to make that final 2 with Caitlin. She just didn't want to do it too soon. So she did it with Caro, and honestly, I think that might have been the final bit. So for me, it goes to Colin and Lauren.
Both really good points for both of them. I was actually just talking to Lauren about this earlier today after watching the episode. I was like, it was a bold move by her to just throw out a final 2, because I would say from my end, when someone, I was saying to her, it's a double-edged sword putting the final 2 or the final 3 out there, especially if you're the one saying it first, because obviously Caro's going to say yes. You always say yes to an alliance in Survivor, even if you don't mean it. And there was like, with her nerves about it, I was like, Caro can take this one of 2 ways. It's be like, you're being way too much right now by pushing this. I'm going to say yes. I can understand that. And maybe I'll keep you in that for now, but I'm going to keep you at a distance. Because if you're saying it to me, you're saying it to someone else. And I don't think Caro was about to come to her and say, "Hey, I want to make a final 2. So it's like, you don't know if you're in Lauren's position. But I think, like you said, it was the right move, and it came at the absolute right time for Lauren's agenda to get hit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. So it's awesome that she ended up doing it, because obviously it is probably what saved that girls' alliance. Because I kind of did feel bad for Caitlin, because she originally did check in at the check-in time for day 1, but she just fell asleep because we were missing players at the time. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that's it for the Ember Awards. So before we close this, do you have any final thoughts?
I've been very much enjoying this season. It's been very well organized. I love this cast, a bunch of great characters. You got great players in here as well. You have some people that are on the rise that I'm excited to see. We're now the Olympians. And you know what? There's one thing that gods know how to do, and it's fight. And I think we're about to see it really start.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love your enthusiasm and thank you for tuning in and thank you for coming on today. I really do appreciate it. So, on that, thank you to everyone for tuning into this podcast. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And if you can, even give it a share, it'd be greatly appreciated. And stay tuned for the afterthoughts. We have, I think, 2 coming up this week, assuming both of our cast members will come on. But on that note, have a good night, guys.